He touched what he had no right to touch. That's where this begins. That's where everything fractures. Not with words, not with threats. With his hand thick, confident, entitled, wrapping around my wrist like I was something he owned. Like I was a thing he could grab in front of 37 witnesses and make an example of. Like my body was public property for his amusement. The sound it made when his fingers closed was loud. Louder than it should have been. The slap of skin on skin, the grinding pressure of bone meeting bone, the wet friction of his palm crushing down on mine, it cut through the noise of the barracks like a whip crack. Conversations stopped mid-sentence. Laughter choked off. Someone dropped something metal that rang once against the floor and then went silent. He wanted that sound. He engineered it. He squeezed hard enough to make sure everyone heard the taking, the claiming, the brutal simplicity of rank asserting itself over flesh. And I felt it. God, I felt every molecule of that grip. The heat of his skin, the calluses on his palm, the deliberate, performative pressure of a man who had done this before to other bodies, other women, other subordinates who couldn't fight back. This wasn't reflexive. This wasn't accidental. This was practiced humiliation. My wrist bent under his force. The small bones shifted. Pain bloomed white and sharp at my forearm, but I didn't make a sound. I wouldn't give him that. I wouldn't give him the gasp or the wince or the flinch that he was orchestrating. That's what he wanted, my pain as punctuation for his power. He was smirking. I could see it in my peripheral vision, that slack, satisfied expression of a predator who thinks the hunt is over. His eyes were doing a lazy circuit of the room, collecting reactions, feeding on the discomfort and the silence and the complicity of everyone who was watching and doing nothing. "You don't salute properly, petty officer," he said, and his voice was casual, conversational, like we were discussing weather. Like his fingers weren't actively bruising tissue. So maybe we need a more hands-on demonstration of military discipline. A few men laughed. Not many, but enough. Enough that the sound existed in the air between us, enough that he felt validated, enough that his grip tightened another degree because the audience was responding. I tried to pull back. Not violently. Not dramatically. Just a simple backward pressure, the instinctive withdrawal of a body that knows it's being violated. My shoulder tensed. My elbow bent. I applied maybe 15 pounds of resistance. He countered instantly, his whole arm locking, his stance widening, his body weight shifting forward. Showing everyone, that I couldn't escape. That resistance was futile. That he had decided when this would end, not me. "Where do you think you're going?" he murmured, and there was something sexual in his tone, something that made my stomach clench with a nausea that had nothing to do with physical pain. The room was watching with the horrible fascination of people who know they're witnessing something wrong but can't look away. Some faces were uncomfortable. Some were curious. Some were enjoying it. And all of them, every single one, were complicit in their silence. That's when my sleeve moved. I hadn't planned it. I wasn't thinking about it. I was focused on the pain radiating from my wrist, on controlling my breathing, on not letting him see how much this hurt, on calculating exactly how many seconds I would wait before I broke his arm in 3 places. But fabric obeys physics, not intention. His grip had bunched the material. His twisting had dragged it. And as I pulled back that one time, as my arm rotated slightly in his grasp, the sleeve of my uniform. Standard issue, designed to stay in place, designed for modesty and regulation, slid up my forearm like a curtain opening on a stage. 3 inches. That's all it took. 3 inches of exposed skin. And there it was. The mark. Black as a burn scar. Precise as a brand. Unmistakable as a signature written in flesh. The Ghost Team insignia. I felt the moment it registered. Not in his grip, that stayed locked, frozen, his fingers still crushing my wrist like they'd been spot-welded there. But in his breathing. In the tiny, choked sound that escaped his throat. in the way his body went absolutely rigid, every muscle seizing at once. The room changed. Silence isn't absence. Silence is a presence. And the silence that detonated through that barracks was physical, suffocating, the kind that presses against your eardrums and makes your chest tight. Someone saw it first. An officer near the door. I caught his face in my peripheral vision. The way his eyes widened, the way his mouth opened slightly, the way all the color drained from his skin like someone had pulled a plug. He took a step backward, then another. His hand came up to his mouth. Then the ripple started. Recognition spreading like poison through water. Eyes finding the mark, understanding what they were seeing, recoiling from the implications. Bodies shifting backward, creating distance, instinctive and immediate. The crowd that had been pressing close to enjoy the spectacle was suddenly dissolving, evaporating, every person desperately trying not to be associated with what was happening. I watched the commander's face. That's what I'll remember when I close my eyes 20 years from now. Not the pain in my wrist. Not the anger burning in my chest. But his face. The exact sequence of emotions that crossed it like a time-lapse of psychological collapse. Confusion first. His eyes found the mark, tracked its edges, processed the design. His brain was working, cataloging, searching through military insignia recognition protocols embedded in years of service. Then recognition. A flicker. A connection made. His pupils dilated. His jaw went slack. Then understanding. The full weight of what he was touching. Who he was touching. What he had done. And then terror. Pure, absolute, soul-destroying terror. His face didn't just pale. It went gray. The kind of gray you see on corpses. His lips parted but no sound came out. His eyes, arrogant and amused 30 seconds ago, were now wide and wild and full of the kind of fear you can't fake, the kind that comes from staring at your own execution. But he didn't let go. That's the thing people don't understand about shock. About trauma. About the moment when your nervous system realizes you've made a catastrophic error. The body doesn't always respond logically. The brain sends the signal. Release, withdraw, run, but the muscles are locked in their last command. His fingers stayed clamped on my wrist. Still crushing. Still violating. Still touching what should never be touched. His hand was shaking now. I could feel the tremor traveling through his grip, through my bones, a vibration of pure panic. Sweat was beading on his forehead, collecting in the creases, running down his temples. His breathing had gone shallow and fast, almost panting. That's not. He started, and his voice cracked. Actually cracked. Like a teenage boy's voice breaking. That can't be, you're not. I didn't help him. I didn't finish his sentences. I didn't explain or confirm or deny. I just looked at him. And that gaze, that silence, that absolute stillness, that's when he truly broke. His knees buckled. Not dramatically. Not like a movie. Just a sudden loss of structural integrity, the way a building collapses when the supports give out. One moment he was standing, and the next his legs were folding, his body weight shifting wrong, his free hand shooting out to catch himself against a nearby table. He missed. His palm hit the edge at the wrong angle, slipped, and he went down to one knee. Hard. The impact echoed through the barracks. His grip on my wrist finally loosened, not released, just failed. His fingers went slack. His hand fell away. I stood over him, my wrist throbbing, my sleeve still rucked up, the mark fully visible now in the harsh fluorescent light. Someone whispered, "Ghost Team Omega." The words were barely audible, but they carried. Everyone heard. Everyone understood. The commander was on his hands and knees now, head hanging, breathing like he'd just run a marathon. A dark patch of sweat was spreading across the back of his uniform. His hands were shaking so badly he could barely support his own weight. I felt no satisfaction. That's what people always get wrong. They think revenge feels good. They think watching your abuser crumble brings catharsis. But standing there, watching this pathetic display, all I felt was tired. Tired and angry and so done with this world where men like him get to put their hands on women like me and think it's their right. The anger lives in my chest like something with teeth. It's always there. Has been for years. Since the first mission. Since the first time I killed someone and then had to pretend I'd never existed. Since the first time I came home and couldn't tell anyone where I'd been or what I'd done or why I woke up screaming. Ghost Team. They say it like it's a badge of honor. Like it's something to aspire to. They don't understand what it means. It means you're legally dead. Your file says Kia. Your family had a funeral. Your name is on a memorial wall. But you're still breathing, still bleeding, still carrying out missions that can never be acknowledged because they never officially happened. It means you've done things that would make career interrogators vomit. You've been places that don't exist on maps. You've killed people whose deaths can never be investigated because those people were never alive in any official capacity. It means you live in the spaces between policy and necessity. Where democracy looks away because it needs certain things done, but can't afford to know how they get done. The mark isn't a tattoo. It's not something you choose. It's burned into your skin during a ceremony that you don't remember because they dose you with enough sedatives to make sure you can't. They do it after your third classified kill. After they're certain you're committed. After they're certain you'll never talk. The design is simple. An Omega symbol. The last letter, the ending. Wrapped in thorns. Black as a void. Precise as a surgical scar. Impossible to fake because it's done with a proprietary compound that shows up under specific wavelengths of light. We can identify each other in the dark. There are maybe 200 of us. Worldwide. Across all branches, all nations that participate in the program. We don't have ranks. We don't have chain of command. We report to exactly 3 people on Earth, and I've never met 2 of them. When we're activated, everyone gets out of the way. Admirals. Generals. Politicians. Because we exist in that terrible space where operational necessity overrides legal authority. And he had grabbed me. He had put his hands on my body. He had tried to humiliate me in front of witnesses. He hadn't known. Of course he hadn't. That's the point. We're supposed to blend in. We're supposed to look like regular service members. We rotate through normal duty stations between missions to maintain our cover. I'd been at this base for 3 weeks, working a signals intelligence desk, flying under every radar, just another petty officer doing her job. Until his ego and his entitlement and his assumption that women in uniform exist for his amusement. I watched him struggle to stand. His legs were shaking too badly. Another officer, a lieutenant commander, ironically 1 rank below him, approached carefully, like approaching a wild animal, and offered a hand. The commander took it. Let himself be pulled up. Stood there swaying, his face still that awful gray color, his eyes unfocused. "Sir," the lieutenant commander said quietly, urgently. "Sir, you need to." I didn't know, the commander interrupted, and his voice was pleading. Actually pleading. I swear to God I didn't know. How could I know? She doesn't. There's no indicator. She's just a... He stopped himself. Even in his panic, even in his terror, he had enough survival instinct not to finish that sentence. Just a what, Commander? Just a woman? Just a petty officer? Just someone you thought you could touch without consequence? The lieutenant commander was staring at my mark now. His face had gone pale too. He glanced around the barracks, saw all the witnesses, all the phones that might be recording, all the careers that might be implicated by proximity. Everyone out, he barked suddenly. Clear the barracks. Now. This is a security situation. Move. People scrambled. The exodus was immediate, desperate. Nobody wanted to be associated with this. Nobody wanted to be questioned about what they saw, what they heard, whether they laughed or encouraged or just stood there watching. Within 30 seconds, the barracks was empty except for me, the commander, and the lieutenant commander. The silence was different now. Heavier. More dangerous. "Ma'am," the lieutenant commander said, and that word, that sudden shift from the feminine her to the respectful ma'am, carried so much weight. "Ma'am, I apologize for—" "You didn't touch me," I said. My voice surprised me. I hadn't spoken since this started, and the words came out cold, flat, empty of anything resembling humanity. The voice I use on missions. The voice that issues kill orders. The voice that negotiates with terrorists and warlords and corrupt officials who understand only power. The lieutenant commander flinched anyway. The commander made a sound. A whimper. Literally a whimper, like a kicked dog. "He did," I continued, lifting my wrist. The bruises were already forming. Dark purple fingerprints staining my skin. Evidence. In front of 37 witnesses. Do you understand what that means? The lieutenant commander's throat worked. He was sweating now too. "Ma'am, I'm sure we can. There must be protocol for." "Protocol," I repeated, and I almost laughed. Would have, if the anger wasn't taking up all the space where humor should live. Yes, there's protocol. It's very simple. Anyone who physically assaults a Ghost Team operative is subject to immediate tribunal under Classified Military Justice Code Section 7. I let that sit for a moment. Section 7 doesn't have appeals, I added. It doesn't have defense attorneys. It doesn't have trials. Just tribunals. And tribunals have 3 possible outcomes: immediate discharge, imprisonment in a black site, or execution for security compromise. The commander's knees buckled again. This time he went all the way down, collapsing onto the floor, curling into himself. His breathing was rapid and shallow. Hyperventilating. His hands were clutching his chest. "He's having a panic attack," the lieutenant commander said, like I couldn't see that. Like I cared. "Good," I said. And I meant it. Let him panic. Let him feel a fraction of the fear that every woman in uniform feels when men like him corner them, grab them, use rank as permission to violate. Let him understand what it's like to be powerless, to be touched without consent, to be humiliated while everyone watches. The pain in my wrist was sharpening now, the adrenaline wearing off, the true extent of the damage revealing itself. He'd crushed blood vessels, compressed nerves, possibly fractured the small bones. This would hurt for weeks. I'd need medical evaluation, physical therapy maybe, all because he thought he could grab me. The lieutenant commander was on his phone now, speaking in urgent, hushed tones. I caught fragments. Situation. Ghost Team. Yes, confirmed. Visible mark. Multiple witnesses. He was calling up the chain. Way up. This would reach flag officers within minutes. Within an hour, someone from the classified program oversight would be on a helicopter. Within 6 hours, the commander's entire life would be systematically dismantled. But that wasn't enough. That would never be enough. Because this wasn't just about him. This was about every man who thought rank gave him ownership of women's bodies. Every officer who made crude jokes and called it camaraderie. Every NCO who brushed against female subordinates and called it an accident. Every service member who watched it happen and said nothing. This was about the system that protected them. The culture that enabled them. The structure that made women like me disappear into classified programs just to have a sliver of protection from men like him. I'd killed 17 people in my career as a ghost. 17 confirmed eliminations in service of national security. Drug lords. Arms dealers. Terrorist financiers. Human traffickers. Each one was sanctioned, documented in files that would never be declassified, justified by threat assessments and intelligence reports and legal counsel from JAG officers with the highest possible clearance. I'd never felt guilty about any of them. But standing there, watching the commander curl into a fetal position on the floor, I felt something close to satisfaction. Not justice. I stopped believing in that years ago. But something. A tiny crack in the armor of powerlessness that women in uniform wear every day. He touched me, and now he would be erased. Not killed. That would be too simple. Too quick. Too merciful. He would be erased from service. His rank stripped. His pension voided. His clearances revoked. His discharge paperwork would be marked in ways that made future employment virtually impossible. He'd spend the rest of his life wondering when they might come for him, whether he'd said something wrong to someone, whether he'd be disappeared to a black site for security concerns. He'd live in the same fear he'd tried to instill in me. The lieutenant commander ended his call. Looked at me. Looked at the commander. Looked at me again. "Ma'am," he said carefully. "Medical is on the way. For both of you. And command wants to know if you're planning to file formal charges." "Formal charges," I repeated. "In what court? What jurisdiction?" "I don't exist, Lieutenant Commander. There's no file to attach charges to. No service record to annotate. No official presence to document abuse against." His face went even paler. He understood. The circular trap of classified operations. I was simultaneously too important to touch and too erased to protect through normal channels. "But he touched someone," I continued. "Someone saw the mark. Someone who now has knowledge of the program. That's a security breach. An exposure event. Those have their own protocols." I turned my attention fully to the commander. He was still on the floor, still hyperventilating, still trapped in the spiral of his own panic. "Look at me," I said. He didn't respond. I said, "Look at me." My voice didn't raise. Didn't need to. Command doesn't come from volume. It comes from certainty. He lifted his head. His eyes were red-rimmed, wet with tears and terror. Snot was running from his nose. His lips were trembling. "You grabbed me because you thought I was weak," I said. "You grabbed me because you thought rank made you untouchable. You grabbed me because you've done it before and gotten away with it and assumed you always would." He tried to speak. His mouth opened. No words came out. "You were wrong about all of it," I continued. "I'm not weak. I've survived things that would shatter your mind. I've done things that you couldn't imagine in your worst nightmares. I've stared into the void and pulled the trigger anyway. And rank? Rank is just metal and cloth. It's a costume. It's a lie we tell ourselves to maintain order." I crouched down, balancing on the balls of my feet, bringing my face level with his. "Power isn't rank," I said softly. "Power is knowing which bodies are protected by law and which bodies exist outside it. Power is understanding that some people can touch others without consequences, and some people like me, can destroy lives with a single report." His whole body was shaking now. The fear was total, consuming, existential. "You touched a ghost," I whispered. Those 4 words. That simple statement of fact. That's what broke him completely. He collapsed forward, forehead hitting the floor, hands clutching at his head, and he started sobbing. Not crying. Sobbing. Deep, wrenching sounds of a man who understood that his life, as he knew it, was over. I stood up. My wrist was screaming. The bruises were darkening. I could feel my pulse throbbing against damaged tissue. But I stood straight. Back rigid. Shoulders squared. The bearing of someone who had earned the right to stand while others crumbled. The door opened. Medical personnel entered with a stretcher and equipment. Behind them, a 2-star admiral I didn't recognize. Behind him, a civilian in a suit that screamed federal oversight. The admiral's eyes found my mark immediately. His posture changed. Straightened. Became deferential. "Ma'am," he said, and his voice carried genuine respect. Not the performative respect officers show each other. The respect reserved for people who operate beyond standard authority. "I'm Admiral Morrison. I've been briefed on the situation. Medical will attend to your wrist immediately, and I want to personally assure you that this incident will be handled at the highest levels of—" "What's his name?" I interrupted. The Admiral blinked. "Ma'am?" "The commander." "What's his full name?" "Commander Robert Chin, ma'am." Attached to naval intelligence, currently serving as. Not anymore, I said. The admiral understood. Nodded. No, ma'am. Not anymore. The medical team was loading the commander onto the stretcher. He wasn't resisting. Wasn't responding. He'd gone somewhere else, somewhere inside himself where the reality of his situation couldn't reach him. They strapped him down. Not for his safety. For everyone else's. People in that level of psychological break sometimes do violent things. As they wheeled him past me, his eyes found mine for a moment. I saw pleading there. Desperation. A silent begging for mercy, for understanding, for some indication that this nightmare would end. I gave him nothing. Not a word. Not a gesture. Not a flicker of emotion. Just that same cold stare that I'd learned in rooms where mercy meant mission failure. They took him out. The civilian in the suit approached me carefully. Ma'am, I'm Special Agent Williams with Defense Intelligence. I'll need to debrief you on the exposure event, document the witnesses, assess the security implications. But first, let's get your wrist looked at. A medic was already beside me, gently taking my arm, examining the damage. She was professional, efficient, carefully not looking at the mark even though it was right there in front of her. Significant bruising, she reported. Possible hairline fracture. Nerve compression evident. I'd recommend x-rays and a full orthopedic evaluation. Fine, I said. The pain was manageable. I'd been hurt worse. Broken bones. Knife wounds. Burns. Concussions. The body heals. It's the other damage that never does. The anger was still there. Still burning. Still demanding more than what had just happened. Because this wasn't justice. This was consequences. And consequences only matter to the person experiencing them. They don't undo the violation. They don't erase the moment when his hand closed around my wrist. They don't give me back the security of existing in a space without threat. I'd existed in threat my entire career. Combat zones. Hostile territories. Deep cover operations where discovery meant torture and execution. But I'd accepted those risks because they came with a mission. They were the price of doing work that mattered. This was different. This was a supposedly safe space. A military base on American soil. Surrounded by people sworn to the same service, the same values, the same code. And he grabbed me anyway. Because under all the uniforms and protocols and regulations, under all the talk of honor and respect and duty, there was still this. Men who believed women's bodies were available for their use. The medic finished her preliminary exam and started wrapping my wrist. The compression helped. The pain dulled slightly. The Admiral was talking to Special Agent Williams in low tones, discussing containment protocols, witness statements, security clearances. Standard procedure for an exposure event. I tuned them out. I was thinking about all the women who didn't have this mark. Who got grabbed and groped and assaulted and had no recourse. Who reported and weren't believed. Who stayed silent because speaking up meant career suicide. Who lived with the knowledge that their bodies were considered fair game by men who wore the same uniform. I was thinking about the women I'd served with before Ghost Team. The ones who'd confided in me about harassment, about retaliation, about the impossible choice between enduring abuse and destroying their careers. I was thinking about the 16-year-old girl I'd been when I joined. Idealistic. Patriotic. Believing that military service meant honor and protection and brotherhood. Not understanding that women's bodies were considered spoils of war even among our own troops. The anger wasn't just for me. It never had been. It was for every woman who'd been touched without permission. Every woman who'd been told she was overreacting. Every woman who'd been forced to work alongside her abuser. Every woman who'd been failed by the system meant to protect her. The mark on my wrist gave me power that they didn't have. And I would use it. Not just today. Not just against Commander Chin. But every time. Every instance. Every man who thought rank or strength or entitlement gave him ownership of women's bodies. The Ghost Team mark was burned into my flesh as a symbol of classified operations, of sanctioned violence, of national security prerogatives that superseded normal law. But I could make it mean something else too. I could make it mean consequence. I could make it mean that some women, at least some, were untouchable not because the system protected them, but because they'd survived enough horror to protect themselves. Ma'am? The medic was looking at me with concern. Your blood pressure is elevated. Are you in more pain than you're indicating? No, I said. I'm fine. I wasn't fine. I would never be fine again. Fine was something that happened to people who lived normal lives, who went to work and came home, who had relationships and hobbies and futures that didn't involve killing people in the dark. But I was functional. And functional was all that mattered. The Admiral approached again. Ma'am, we have a secure vehicle ready to transport you to the medical facility for proper evaluation. After that, Special Agent Williams will conduct the debrief at a classified location. Your presence here has been compromised. We'll need to relocate you. Relocate me. Erase my presence from this base. Reset my cover. Send me somewhere else to blend in and disappear and pretend to be normal until the next mission. The life of a ghost. Always moving. Always hiding. Always alone. Understood, I said. We walked toward the door. The Admiral held it open. Special Agent Williams followed. The medic stayed close, monitoring me for signs of shock or trauma. Outside, the sun was bright. Painfully bright. I'd been in the dim barracks so long that my eyes needed time to adjust. There were people everywhere. Word had spread. I could see them trying not to stare, trying not to acknowledge what they'd heard, trying not to be implicated in the exposure event. But they were watching. They always watch. That's the thing about violence against women. Everyone sees it. Everyone knows it's happening. But everyone develops this incredible capacity to look away, to not get involved, to convince themselves it's not their problem. Until someone like me makes it their problem. Until someone with power and protection and the willingness to use both stands up and refuses to be silent. The commander's career was over. His life was over. He'd spend decades haunted by this, wondering when they might come for him, unable to explain to anyone what had happened because the event itself was classified. Good. Let him live with fear. Let him understand what it feels like to exist in a world where any moment could bring destruction. Let him carry that weight the way women carry the weight of constant vigilance, of always watching for threats, of never feeling completely safe. We reached the vehicle. Black SUV. Tinted windows. Government plates. The kind of vehicle that screams federal operation, but is also so common in DC that nobody looks twice. I climbed in the back. The medic sat beside me. The Admiral and Special Agent Williams took the front seats. As we pulled away, I looked back at the barracks. Just a building. Gray concrete. Standard military architecture. No different from 1,000 other buildings on 1,000 other bases. But inside that building, something had shifted. A man had learned that some women can't be touched without consequences. And 37 witnesses had learned that the mark on my wrist meant more than classified operations. It meant protection. It meant power. It meant that at least in this one small corner of the military, at least for women with this specific designation, the rules were different. It wasn't enough. It would never be enough. But it was something. The vehicle merged into traffic. Another anonymous black SUV among thousands. Another invisible movement of classified personnel. Another ghost disappearing into the infrastructure of national security. I closed my eyes. My wrist throbbed. The anger burned. And somewhere in a military medical facility, Commander Robert Chin was learning that touching a ghost meant touching death itself. Not physical death. The death of everything you were. The death of your career, your reputation, your future. The death of the person you thought you were and the life you thought you'd live. I'd killed 17 people in service of my country. Today, I'd killed number 18. He just didn't know he was dead yet.